Hey everyone, it's Dominic, the Primetime Treasure Hunter. Thanks a lot for coming by to check out another video. So I have a question for you to start things off today. How many of you have gone outsourcing, you come across an item that looks old, typically an old book, but it could be an old toy, an old record, something that has a date on it that looks old. You're excited to go check out the comps, you grab out your phone, you open your eBay app, you're just about to go check it out, but then you look a little bit closer when you try to find the year and you're met with something that looks like this, and you're bummed out because they're the dreaded Roman numerals and you were never taught how to decipher Roman numerals, and as a result you can't quite check the comps because you don't know how to match the year up. And I know a lot of resellers who have passed up on items like this because they just don't know the Roman numerals, so they wind up putting the item to the side and they don't pick it up. Sometimes they're embarrassed to ask somebody else around them who might know how to interpret the Roman numerals, or they pick it up and decide to research it later, and then they find out that the version that they had, even though it looked old, is not quite the one that is worth a lot of money. So maybe, for example, they have the 1938 version of the book, but it's the 1936 version, which is what these letters represent here in Roman numerals. It represents the year 1936, and the 1936 one is really the one that's worth a lot of money. So it can cause a lot of problems. That's why I put together this Roman numerals for resellers tutorial, and I hope that it helps you out. Now, there are other tutorials out there that you could find online. I haven't checked to see if there was any other reseller that put one together, but you know, just from basic educational websites that I found that a lot of them provide these really long examples, and I fear that they could be overwhelming for people who are just trying to get a basic understanding of how to do this. And it really is basic. It's very easy. It's just you wouldn't know that if you were never taught it before. And so let's jump into the tutorial, and of course, if there's any questions that you have afterwards, feel free to let me know down below in the comment section. I'll try to help you out further. But basically, there's two things you need to understand about Roman numerals. One, you need to understand what each Roman numeral represents, and fortunately, as you can see here, there's really not that many of them. Once you've understood what each one of them represents, then all you have to do is understand the basic way in which they relate to one another. It's that simple. So let's take you through each one of these Roman numerals. Now this one we're just going to call an I because it looks like an I, an uppercase I, and that is a 1. And you know, you can see down here in red, this is the number in our current system. And you know, just to go back to where we were before here for a second, what you could see is that, you know, this system, this Roman numeral system, one of the reasons people use it, it looks cool, it kind of looks old-fashioned and stuff, and so some people like that kind of look, but it's a more inefficient system because you are representing the year with, in this instance, 8 digits, whereas with, you know, the current number system that we use, we're representing the year 1936 with 4 digits. And sometimes you're going to use, you know, more letters in the Roman numeral system or less, depending on what the year is. But it is definitely a more inefficient way to write things out. So you have the, let's go back to our, you know, little correspondence key here. You have a V, and a V, you're just gonna have to memorize that, is represented by a 5, and or a 5 is represented by a V, I should say, in the Roman numeral system. You have an X, and the X represents the number 10. A good way or an easy way to remember that is the iPhone X is called that because it's the 10th version. So that's a simple way to just remember that. And L is a 50. A C, a way you could remember that is a C is, think of the word century, which is 100 years. So a C is 100. D is 500. And fortunately for years, unless you're in the 1800s, you're not going to have to really think about the D too much. So once you're in the 1900s and above, you're really not going to have to worry about that. And then we have the M, a way to represent or remember that the M represents 1,000 is just think of M for millennium. So those are the Roman numerals, and that's the numbers that they correspond to in our system. So now let me take you through how they relate to one another. And to start off at a very basic level, as I showed you up here, the I is, you know, a 1. Now, once you start putting another 1 in front of it, so we have 2 of these I's, that represents a 2. Now, if you want to add another one in front of it, that gives us a 3. So they just, as you can see, they just add up. That's it. Just kind of like tally marks. Just think of it that way when you're dealing with these I marks. They are just tally marks. Let me just go back to that. Okay, now let's jump ahead. We're going to skip over the 4 because the 4 is where people start to get tripped up. But I'm going to explain it to you in just a second. To do so, I want to just remind you that the V is a 5. Now you'll see a 4 is an IV and a 6 is a VI. Okay, why is that? This is the most important part of the video to understanding Roman numerals. When you see the lower Roman numeral behind a bigger Roman numeral, as represented by this key up top. So the I is less than the V. What you do is subtract it. You subtract the I from the V. So you're basically just saying, I'm subtracting 1 from 5, and that gives me 4. That's how you do it. And that's why over here, when you see that you have the I goes after the V, you just add it. So a V is a 5, an I is a 1, a 5 plus a 1 is a 6. Therefore, if you want to get to a 7, you just go VII, that gives you a 7, and an 8 is a VIII. You're just adding it together. Now, the reason why you don't subtract the V from the I is because you're not going to do negative numbers in Roman numerals. So as long as you just understand how they relate to one another like that, very, very simple, very, very easy to do. And I'm going to take you through some additional examples to figure it out. So let's say we wanted to do a 9. Well, we're not going to use 2 V's, okay? We're going to use an X because the X represents the 10. So you're going to just put an I right behind the X, and so that is basically 10 minus 1, or 1 take away from the X equals 9. And as a result of that, and corresponding to that, if you wanted to do an 11, all you would do, and I don't have it up here, but you would just take an X and put a 1 in front of it, or an I in front of it. So XI would equal 11. XII would equal 12, XII would equal 13, XIV would equal 14, XV would equal 15, and that's how you do it. And then if you want to get a 20, you just do 2 X's, or if you want to do a 30, you just do 3 X's, because you're just adding them together. So X plus X is 20, 10 plus 10 is 20. X plus X plus X is 30, so it's just 3 X's together. The L, remember the L is a 50, so if we want to figure out what 40 is, well, all we have to do very simply is put an X behind it, because see, the X is behind the L. So it's just basically saying, take the X, take the 10, subtract it from the 50, that gives you 40. So you just have to understand how to do some basic subtraction and basic addition, and that will help you figure it out. And you can see the system is very organized. So just like an X behind the L is a 40, an X after the L is a 60. Because when you have that lower value after the higher value Roman numeral, then you are adding them together. So an L plus an X is a 60, an L plus an X is a 70, and L plus an X plus an X plus an X is an 80, because you're doing 50 plus 10 plus 10 plus 10. Or with the 70, 50 plus 10 plus 10. So 50 plus 20 equals 70. And so now we get into the hundreds. It's the same system, you see? So 100 is represented by the C, like I showed you here. And if you just want to figure out how to do 90, all you do is plop an X right behind it, and you get C, which is the 100, and you subtract the 10, and you get 90. If you wanted to do 110, you would just put an X right in front of the C, so you'd have CX. That's how it would work. And same thing here. I told you before that a 15 would be an X and a V. Well, if we want to do 515, we just take the D and we put an X and a V in front of it, and that gives us 515. You just have to understand how these Roman numerals relate to one another in terms of size order. And once you understand that basic concept of where they are in relation to one another, then that's going to help you figure out if you have to subtract or if you have to add. And that's it. That's all there is to it. Once you do that, you will be able to understand how to interpret Roman numerals. Now, when it comes to years, for the 1900s, you just have to remember something very simple, which I'm going to go back over here because I don't have 1900 written on this one, but let's go back to the book. So we have the M, which is 1,000, right? Then we have another M over here. Now that's another 1,000. That would be 2,000. However, we have a C behind it. And a C, going back over here to our key, a C is less than an M. So as a result, what do? We subtract it. So going back, going back over here, since we subtract it, that gives us 1,900. Now, if you don't want to remember to have to do that math, just remember, every single time you see MCM, every time, that is 1,900. That's it. You just have to know that. Once you know that, then all you have to do afterwards is add everything after the MCM together or do the subtractions. So here you go. MCM is 1,900. So we get an X, an X, an X. What's that? That's 30, remember? Okay. Then we have a V. So we have to think to ourselves, is the V less than the X or is it greater than the X? Well, we have the V and the I there, and that's going to give us a 6. So we're just going to add that to the 30. That's it. It's that simple. We're just adding it together because you see the X is bigger than the V, as you could see from over here. We'll just go back over here. The X is bigger than the V. So as a result, it wouldn't make sense for us to you're not going to subtract the X from the V. Remember, we're not going to deal with negative numbers in Roman numerals. Now, if you're dealing with the year 2000, although you're not going to see Roman numerals too much for the year 2000, you just have two M's instead of an M, a D, and a C, because there's no need to subtract anything for 2000 from the two M's. You know, over here, you had to do that because you have to have a way to represent 1900. You can't just put two M's together because that would give us 2000. So it's really, really that simple. I mean, to take you through, if you just to be thorough, if you're dealing with the 1800s, and sometimes you will, well, here we have an M, right? We have a D, so we're just taking 1,000. We're adding 500 to that, so that's 1,000 plus 500. Then we have 3 C's after that, so we just add them together. So 1,500 plus 100 is 1,600, plus another C is 1,700, plus another C is 1,800. And now we have an X and a C. Well, we just take the X, subtract it from the C, and that gives us 90. Okay? You never put 4 in a row with Roman numerals. The maximum is always going to be 3. And so that's basically how you do it. And this will help you understand when you see Roman numerals on clocks in terms of how to do it. You know, there might be some lingering questions that you have. Maybe, you know, I hope that I made this understandable for you and explained it in an easy to understand way. If not, and you still feel that it is you know, causing you some questions or concerns, let me know. Give me some examples, for example, of something that you are trying to figure out or confused about, and I will break it down for you in the comment section. I love doing Roman numerals. I find them fun and interesting, and I like coming across them and deciphering them, and, you know, showing the kids how to do it and that sort of stuff, because they don't teach it, at least you know, around here. They're not teaching it in the school systems in terms of how to do it anymore, but that's where I learned it back in the day, where they did teach it. But you know, nowadays I don't think they teach it anymore. Just like in most schools, they're not teaching how to write in script. So a lot of kind of older fashioned things are kind of going away, I guess, in terms of what they're teaching in school. And that's why I wanted to kind of bring some of this back and teach it to you, because you will come across it as a reseller. So I hope that it was easy to understand for you. If not, again, just let me know down in the comments section. Give the video a like if you enjoyed it. Make sure that you share it with others. If you know people who struggle with Roman numerals and think this could help them out, please make sure you pass it on to them. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure that you come by to the Facebook group, the Facebook Reselling Resource Center. We had a seller-thon yesterday that raised about $200 in sales for our sellers. So that was a great experience. There was lots of be on the lookout items there, lots of fun things. So check that out and come over to my Instagram account at prime_time_treasure. I'll see everyone at the next video, everyone. Take care.